Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am delighted to be joined by the mighty Quinn. It is Monday. Quinny, is it a happy Monday? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Celtic, of course, I think swept Hearts aside at the weekend. We're going to be talking about some individual performances and obviously everything else in the world is Celtic. What was your take on the game overall, Quinny?
That was a good game. I managed to make it along to it, which was a welcome surprise. And yeah, despite the horrible weather and all the rest, it was a good game overall. Game of two halves, not in the best way, but yeah, it was a good one. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
You know, you mentioned the weather there, and I think that's important in relation to a lot of the kind of topsy-turvy play in the first half. I've been looking at a lot of the kind of reaction, Quinny, about how Hearts dominated us in the first 10 minutes and all this kind of stuff. I just think, you know what, there's this little niggling issue, I think, at the moment, with us starting a little bit slowly. And Brendan spoke about it, didn't he, on Friday? And he puts that down to the two performances against Rangers. I think you could also throw it into another few games this season. And I felt at the beginning of this match against Hearts that we were a wee bit slow to start, but a lot of the misplaced passes, etc., I'm putting it down to the weather. I mean, it was a greasy pitch and the wind was swirling.
Yeah, there's certainly a bit of that going on for sure. I think more with the whole, like, that kind of element of it, there is a little bit of, like, you're still playing against another team, you know, like, and the way, like, Hearts is set up, the way we've seen Rangers do once or twice, as well as, you know, one or two other teams like St Mirren and whatever else over the last couple of years. It's sometimes when it's a different problem to solve, it just takes the guys an extra little bit of time to get into it. And like other teams win duels, interceptions, like you're not going to make every pass and stuff like that. So I think there's a little bit of respect to the opponent maybe that comes into it a little bit as well. And as much as we're riding high and we smash everyone for the most part, like it's a game of football. It's not one-way traffic the whole game.
Exactly. And, you know, we're up against the side here who probably you would say are on the ascendancy when you look at their, you know, their trajectory this season. And obviously still in the Scottish Cup, a potential opponent for us in the final, should we overcome St Johnstone. Respect to our semi-final opponents. When you're looking at Hearts, and I know things are different in the Cup, Quinny, we've seen it this season when, you know, we've absolutely trounced Aberdeen 6-0 and they've given us some trouble a few weeks before that at Celtic Park. When I'm looking at Hearts at the weekend, I'm thinking to myself, we have got the measure of this team. We, you know, if we meet Aberdeen, if we meet Hearts, I've not got any fears insofar as I don't think they've worked us out to that degree.
No, I would definitely go along with that. I thought Hearts actually came at it in an interesting way at the weekend. You know, Brendan said himself in the pre-match that the new manager kind of worked out like a diamond shape with them. I think we've seen that like really in all their kind of matches prior to the weekend. And it was still kind of the same shape, but rather than a diamond, it was a three at the back. So you're basically just taking your deepest midfielder and swapping him for a defender, essentially. And like you know, like I say, like Hearts, you know, when we've came up against tough games like away before at St Mirren and one or two of these other clubs, like when they come out with something a little bit different, it's unexpected. It is something to be measured. We had a similar thing with Aberdeen when we drew 2 each with them, where we won the first half 2-0. They made 2 changes at half time and got back into the game. And then that became a bit of a kind of meta that went around the league where everyone thought, right, well, at half time, change it up against Celtic and maybe you can, you know, get a change in the second half or whatever. We've seen lots of, no, maybe not lots, but like 2 or 3 teams at least try that kind of half time game of 2 half vibe with us. And I think the way Hearts have went about it, you could maybe say they've kind of copied it a little bit from the Rangers kind of blueprint they've had over recent weeks, which, yeah, fair enough, there's a bit of that in it. But it's just another one of those ones where, sorry, I've had a feeling my spidey senses were tingling there. We're going to get somebody else popping in. But I think like we seen with Aberdeen, that didn't work in the semi-final. We smashed them 6-0. You know, like it feels like Hearts have maybe, like they could try their diamond thing because we haven't played that yet. But they've kind of played their wild cards. They've kind of played their wee ace up their sleeve. It felt like in that match, and like you say, we've got the measure of them now. So if we were to play them again in like a must-win cup match, that unexpected, they've done something a bit different, is less likely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And by the way, maybe I'm inspired by the fact that you have the great Lionel Messi on your wall there, Quinny. You might notice for the eagle-eyed among you or those watching on a particularly big screen, there is a Messi item up here somewhere. Where is it? It's up here. Look at that. That is a bottle of the new Messi juice. Now, there's a story behind this. The story is the guy promoting this in Scotland is none other than Sam Wardrop, who we had on This Is Acsom a few weeks back. The promo was filmed by our videographer, Gordon, who films This Is Acsom. And the wee guy thought it would be nice to have some pink in the background. So he bought me a bottle of this. Big shout out to the wee fella. But that's the reason why I have a bottle of juice. And it's no ginger. It's all about the hydration. Liam, talking of which, looks like you caught the sun, mate. What's the weather like over there?
Absolutely freezing, actually, if I'm being entirely honest.
Looks like you've been sitting at the back on the barbecue there.
No,
or are you been at the gym?
No, I had to go to City Hall this morning to do some tax stuff. And unlike Rangers, I actually believe in paying my taxes, you know. I didn't get the memo about the clocks going back forward yesterday. So I was sitting here in my Todd thinking, I've still got an hour. And then I get the thing on my phone saying you're going live. And I'm like, what? Oh, no.
Mad rush. There's plenty to talk about in relation to individual performances, and I want to do that because a lot of people in the comments are talking about this run-in, and that's what it's all about. Before we talk about the players as such, I want to focus a wee bit on Brendan Rodgers. Guys, it's a tiny point to note, but I know for a fact that when it comes down to the business side of football, certain people put on their glad rags, and I watch Quinny when it's a transfer deadline show, and I know you're suited up, mate, and it's all about the mentality and the psychology of it. Listen, did you notice Brendan had the suit back on?
I did, but I heard you guys talking about it in the post-match. So yeah, that was kind of lost on me, but I didn't, when I heard you talking about it post-match on Saturday, he's also had noticed the change of wardrobe prior, so that's just not... I was at the game as well, so I didn't really have the TV side of it to see the interviews and stuff like that, or see him on the touchline or whatever. But yeah, I kind of got that vibe as well when you highlighted it. Like maybe it's after this international break, it's award season.
It's award season. You're right, and it is literally down to the business side of the campaign. Liam, we're chasing another treble. I keep banging on about this because the turnout was incredible last week. But Martin O'Neill, he broke something of a deadlock when it came to trebles. He was only the second manager to do it at Celtic Park, and it was our third treble, 2000-2001. But the man who normalised them at Celtic Park was indeed Brendan Rodgers. And in all the time he's been at Celtic, Liam, he has only given up one trophy. He's only given up one trophy, and it was last season. It was the League Cup, and it was down to that 1-0 defeat against Kilmarnock. You remember Nat Phillips? No, that seems so far away, that game, doesn't it?
It was really early in the season as well, wasn't it?
It was, and I think we're still trying to find our feet with all the deluge of new signings, and it was a rotten day, and they beat us. And yeah, Haksabanovic probably should have had a penalty near the end of that game as well. But it does look as though he's got that laser focus back on Liam after the defeat against Rangers. Honestly, I just think he takes it personally when these things happen.
Absolutely. Can I just say, you guys talked about wearing suits and whatever. I grew up in Cumbernauld and Kilsyth, Lanarkshire. And we used to say, would you call a guy from Lanarkshire who's wearing a shirt and tie the defendant,
Come on. Listen, one of these days you'll see us all suited and booted. Not sure what the occasion will be. There's maybe a tailor out there that wants to sponsor the show, Quinny, and we'll just sit here all suited up. But Brendan meant business. And I think that at the same time, we also had the reintroduction, Liam, of a few faces we've not seen in a while. Obviously, McGregor was back. He's been out for a lot shorter time than some of the others. Jamesy Forrest comes back into the fray. Paulo Bernardo back in action. And I think this bodes well for the running.
Aye. I mean, I'm just saying now, if we get a penalty at any point in the next few weeks and he's on the park, then I think James Forrest has to take it. I think that's only fair. I think he's earned that.
Yeah, absolutely does. What we're talking, 16 seasons, Liam?
Aye, 16 seasons. Funnily enough, one of the last games that I went to, the last league game I went to, I think, because I went to 2 Champions League games in 2012 when I was back, but the last league game I went to was James Forrest's debut. So there's a time warp for you.
That is sensational, by the way. And for everybody out there who's going to give Liam a dig for not going to the games, he does live a few miles away from Celtic Park. I'm not sure exactly how many thousand miles, Liam, but there's a few miles between yourself and Paradise. We're going to be talking
7,812. I googled it.
There you go. There you go. A couple of questions I have specifically for you, because you've got an ear to the ground over there, Liam. First one being Kyogo. What is the story with Kyogo right now?
Well, this is an interesting one because this all started after I wrote a blog a week ago saying, what if we went back in for Kyogo? Then somebody who I won't name, because I don't want to throw him under the bus, but somebody at the Daily Record, who I went to college with, so I'm guessing he's aware of me and I'm aware of him, picked up the story and gave it, his own kind of, yeah, that would be a good idea if it happened. Next thing you know, Sports Illustrated run it as if it's an actual story and quote the Daily Record as their source. So I really don't think there's anything in it, but it's just like, I feel kind of guilty. It's like I've started a snowball effect here that's kind of gone around the world because I made a stupid blog while I was waiting for my dinner.
What I find interesting about that, Quinny, is the way that sources are identified, utilised, and before you know it, it's established almost as fact, as if it's cast iron. And because of the way the world, before you know it, it's running on probably a couple of hundred news sources out there online, and a great deal of people will believe it. See, when I look at the Kyogo scenario, I loved him. I thought he gave you an element and a dynamic that no one else in the team gave you. He's a different type of player from Daizen, who we'll get on to speak about. But there was something not working between him and Brendan, in my view, Quinny. And near the end, when Brendan Rodgers was talking about, not wanting to be here and all the rest of it, and the way that the move was almost manufactured, if you like, by the player and through his agency, etc. I look at it and I don't think it's a good idea to go back sometimes. And if the relationship's not there between the manager and the player, then he's never ever going to recapture that golden period that he had under Ange Postecoglou, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, water under the bridge at this point. Like I was kind of speaking about this in a video last week. I think it was like a scouting one or something. And I think yeah, he has manufactured the move. It's not like Ren have been like, oh, Kyogo's like top of our list, we need to go and get him. There's been like, obviously there's interest there. Obviously they went and paid the money and signed him and all the rest of it. But it felt very much more like it was instigated from his end, the change of agency, which was covered on this channel quite a lot at the time when it happened, as well as like it was after the young boys game. Now we can let you go, as if it was all kind of set up and just waiting to let the dominoes fall on it. So yeah, like it would be great if he came back and stuff like that, because we know who he is. He'll fit in and he'll probably pick up where he left off and all the rest of it. But I think it's it's just not the best way to go about it, I don't think, in terms of the summer recruitment for this year.
No, I agree with that. And listen, as I said before, I absolutely love Kyogo. I don't like quality leaving the football club, but what's happened since then, two things. I don't think we're buying Jota if Kyogo doesn't leave. I think there was a wee bit of an knee-jerk there. I don't think he was on our radar. And then the other part of that is that Daizen Maeda starts playing through the middle, and he is the man we're going to be talking about next, because what we are seeing, sorry, Liam, to big you up again twice on one show, but if there was somebody that said at first that it was your good self, you were talking about Maeda as a centre forward before anyone else. I think, you've got to look at this. We had Kyogo through the middle, right? We've had a few other centre forwards coming and going in that time who were going to get game time. Yakamakis, of course, Ida, these guys were all going to be ahead in the pecking order in that position for game time. So Maeda's played the vast majority of his minutes on the wing, and that's fine. But what a sensation he's been since he's moved inside, Liam. We're going to be talking about this campaign he's having, the potential for him to do even more. He hit his 29th and 30th goals of the season, Liam, and I'm sure you'd have been sitting there with a big beaming grin on your face, because thinking to yourself, I told you so.
Well, I mean, I do have the benefit of hindsight, having seen him play up front 5 years ago, but the thing is that I'm really hoping that, we keep this team together and we keep this set up for next season. A full season of Daizen as the main centre forward. I mean, that, dare I say it, that, Henrik's 53 goals in a season could be under threat.
Imagine
if we had a full season of Daizen as a centre forward. Can you imagine it?
Oh, well, actually, I was having a wee look at this. I love my stats, as you know, a bit of a geek in that respect. But I was having a look at the all-time kind of goal-scoring records. Now, No one comes close to Jimmy McGrory because he'd done it a number of times. He scored 57 goals in one season. But this is the list of 8 players who have scored 40 or more goals in a season for Celtic. And it's obviously chronological. So Jimmy McGrory was a goal-scoring machine, guys. An unbelievable player. And it took it right up until the 1960s before Joe McBride joined that elite band. Bobby Lennox did the same. Into the 70s, we had Kenny Dalglish, and then in the 1980s, Charlie Nicholas and Brian McClare. Henrik Larsson joined the club, did it a few times, scored 50 plus a couple of times as well. And then Lee Griffiths in 2015-16, he was the talisman for Ronnie Dylan, and he got 40 goals. But it's one of these things that doesn't happen that often, Quinny. Now, I've asked the question, and it would be a massive, massive effort. That was the OCD working into place. It would be a massive effort to get another 10 goals in 9 games, but form would tell us that he's capable of doing it, Daizen.
Yeah, well, it's a wee bit deja vu to when we were chatting about Kyogo when he was still in the building, reaching 100. Like a couple of hat-tricks, and it makes a world of difference, And again, I heard you guys chatting about it post-match, that list, a few guys repeating themselves on the 40-plus mark, and I would say it's a legendary list. Again, this was something I think you were chewing over on Saturday after the game. Lee Griffiths maybe not be a legend to a lot of people, but 40 goals in a season, he was pretty good that year. If you remember, he scored some belters and all the rest of it. So it is what it is. But I think it's definitely possible. The chat's firing off on it now. He is a goal a game at the moment. He is if you see him starting, up front. There's no reasonable expectation he's not going to get a chance or two and put them away, because the main difference we've seen from him at centre forward is he's just not having any of these kind of clumsy, bad technique kind of moments where you've seen it because he's not a winger. It's kind of something I've said quite often about Daizen. Even if you do see him out wide, he's like a wide forward. He's not a guy you want crossing the ball and dribbling and whatever. He's you want him more kind of being the forward kind of thing and maybe getting the width from the fullback, which Tierney might help with. Because again, with the Kyogo thing as well, Brendan did say Kyogo was his profile perfect striker in terms of the speed and all that kind of gameplay stuff, which Daizen has just filled the shoes of absolutely perfectly. So I would say it stands to reason that any replacement that we get for Kyogo is going to be kind of similar to probably Daizen, in the sense of you could play them wide forward as well as centre forward, and then you've got a wee bit more variation and options in the team. If somebody's injured or out of form, you've then just got more solutions. Because as much as if you look at the front line now, I know Yang and Forrest aren't exactly everyone's favourite backup wingers or whatever, but even just Forrest being out totally hamstrung really what we could do in a lot of matches and really restricted us for who we can play. So I think that will kind of bear into it a little bit more. So I think there'll be more focus on Daizen playing through the middle next season. Don't get me wrong on that one, but we still probably will get another forward this year. So it might not be as black and white as he'll start all season and play 60 games, score 60 goals or something.
Yeah, and I think it adds a little bit extra if a player doesn't take the penalties, and they get all these kind of records. George Cadet, for example, he didn't take the penalties. He scored goals for fun. Never scored 40, of course. James Kirwan, someone shouted on the socials that Chris Commons scored 40. He didn't. I think it was 34 he scored, was his all-time best for Celtic. And by the way, Chris Commons, what a player he was. And he's one of the guys at the moment who seems to be on the naughty step in relation to how it ended at Celtic, and then maybe throwing in some of his punditry career into that mix as well. There needs to come a point, I think, where guys like him are welcomed back into the fold. James Kirwan, no for a game. I don't think he could do a job for us, but certainly on this show as a guest. James Kirwan, get this over the line ASAP. Play steady football like Saturday. Few tweaks needed to improve passing and possession. Not long till the champagne is flowing. No, you're spot on. And Jungle Lion in nice and early. Great weather for the next 10 days or so. Smell the summer and the trophies. As I was coming out there, I could smell the barbecues from last night out in the back gardens here in Dunfermline. So absolutely get in about it. Talking of which, Giggsy the Poet, a.k.a. Kevin Graham, wants to get in about it as well, and he's going to join us as well. It's a full house. There we go. Kev, welcome back after, and I'm going to say this, 65,000 plus people have watched your poem online, just on the socials. We've not put it up on YouTube yet because we're going to do a professional video for that, because it deserves the professional aspect. Talk us through what it is for anyone who wasn't at the gig, or for any of the 65,000 people who haven't actually tuned in today and who haven't seen it. So let us know, what was it all about? What were you doing reciting poetry for Martin O'Neill to come onto the stage? It was almost like, remember Shooting Stars, the Dove from Above, and you had to summon it. You were summoning Martin O'Neill onto the stage, weren't you?
You just gave me an idea there. I maybe should do that for the next one. Just get like a big dove and go uvavu and just bring it in.
Hey, I'm all for it. I'm all for
it. Basically, a few years back, Paul, you'll remember, we had an idea for like a sort of promo video, and it was basically when we were doing Dalkeith, and it was like everybody to pick their favourite. What gave you your Celtic State of Mind? And it didn't quite work for certain reasons. So it was one of the things that gets buried in your mind, your creative mind that gets buried there. And a couple of weeks ago, I was pestering you for gigs, going, you're going to all these supporters clubs, can I come on and do 5 minutes? And you went like that to me. He says, well, write an introduction of the night. Mm-hmm. And he says, it could be like your choose life. And then he says, it could be like your choose life. And he came up with the line, choose having a Celtic state of mind. And basically it came from there. So basically I went through my memory banks and listed things that what would make you choose being a Celtic fan, or players that make you choose to be a Celtic fan. And there's a bit of humour in that as well. So it seems to have resonated with folk, which is really, really decent. So also as well, I mean, we're in this game. I mean, being a Celtic supporter for me is far, far, far bigger than winning games of football, drawing games of football, losing games of football. It's a bigger thing. We're always going to be here no matter if the team's ranked rotten. And that's the bottom line. And I think the poem kind of encapsulates that it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter how dark days are. There's always going to be great days. You're always going to get memories, and that's what football actually brings. So, I mean, the first line I did come up with was choose Love Street 86, nuclear rainfall. Because if everybody knows who was there in Love Street 86, basically Chernobyl had happened 3 days before. And I'm going to blame that rainfall for my hair gone bald. That's what I'm going to blame it on. The fact that I was at Love Street that day. It's the reason my hair's now falling out.
An iconic game, right, for anybody who was. I wasn't at Love Street, but I remember finally getting the opportunity to speak to Brian McClare about it. And I'm pretty sure this is still out there on YouTube, actually. The time we did an event with him at McCool's, there was maybe 60 people there. Maximum, Kev. And it was it was broadcast live, and it's still out there on YouTube somewhere. And I asked him about Love Street, and his memories of Love Street were the fact that a few days before the game, he had decided to go and get a perm. And a few minutes into the game with the rain, the hair started getting frizzy. So Quinny, you're expecting them to talk about that brilliant goal, one of the greatest goals, if it wasn't Le Petit Merde that actually put it in the back of the net. You're expecting them to do all that, and then romanticism around the comeback. There's a fairy tale about this club, and he starts talking about his perm and how he was getting a wee bit self-conscious because it was getting frizzy. That is Brian McClare for you, by the way. I love the guy. But yeah, it was a tremendous moment, Kev. We're going to do it, and we're going to do it professionally, and it's going to go on the YouTube channel. But going back to that original recording session, there are videos in the archive of, for example, yourself, JP, Amy Canavan, talking about Brian Degnan, talking about what made them support Celtic. And it was like Celtic is Pierre, winning that header and winning the Scottish Cup in '95 and all this kind of stuff. It's out there. Maybe I'll dig it out. It's in the archive. It's on a hard drive somewhere. And maybe that'll go on the YouTube as well. With everybody's permission, of course. With everyone's permission. Here's some comments coming in. Barry O'Sullivan comes in to say 5 more wins for another record-breaking treble. Liam, see at this stage of the season where most of the hard work has been done, all the cliches can come out about just concentrating on the next game, or anything can happen in a cup game. As we've said, maybe he's fine-tuning Brendan with the suit and all the rest of it, and he's just focused on the last potential 9 games of the season. But in terms of a team, how do you approach this? Is it all the cliches? Do they all get dragged out? Because I would look at some of the games and say, right, we're going to win that game. Therefore, we might have this cup game, or we might have Ibrox coming up. and then you're trying to assemble not two teams as such, but give Nawrocki some games, but maybe no the games against Rangers, for example. This is where I'm going with this. So Nawrocki's came in. We've got absolutely no choice when it comes to Sinisalo, but Nawrocki's came in. I've been impressed with his two performances. But when we're going at the Ibrox or when we're going at the St Johnstone semi-final, does he stay in? This is a big question for me, Liam. Is he still a backup? Is he a first choice?
What I would do, and this is probably going to attract a few reactions in the comments, but I'm going to say it anyway. Assuming that we can win the league within the next 3 games, right? Go to Ibrox. I would play a reserve team. Just treat them with the contempt they deserve. Just feel like, this is how little you matter to us. We're going to put the boys, we'll probably still beat you.
See,
it's a no-lose situation, right? If we get gubbed, it was the youth team. If we beat them, it is the ultimate humiliation. It's a no-lose scenario because the league's already won. And why should we risk any of our players getting injured by the hammer throwers with a cup final to come?
I remember the same discussion happening before Andy's final game against Rangers. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, was that 4-0 or 3-0? 3-0? 3-0. Kobayashi played, remember? And it was almost at that point, I started getting the sense, and maybe with a bit of hindsight, looking back now, that it was almost like, I'm checked out, it doesn't really matter. But it bloody did matter when I was gutted after that game. I hate getting beat, and I hate getting beat from Rangers. So I would go hell for leather in that game, personally, because I want revenge. I know that's a word Brendan didn't want to use the last time, but they'd beat us twice in the bounce in the league. And I want to go to Ibrox and wreak revenge on them next time round.
The comments would seem to concur with you, mate. I think I should just back off into a corner here and be quiet.
Quinny, what's your take on it?
I think context is the most important part. I think if we'd beat them the last 2 times, I would maybe be behind Liam on this one. Like, why not? Just rub their nose in it, give Kenny some minutes, play him up front with Ida, just do something a bit wacky. And kind of go for it. But with the last 2 games going the way they went, like Rodgers' ego kind of gets brought up here quite often, and like his derby record was borderline impeccable, on return, and that's maybe not quite the case anymore. So I just don't see him thinking any other way than we need to rectify the head-to-head for this season so we can sleep at night again. So I think it will be throwing the kitchen sink at them personally. But let's say if we beat them the last couple of times, I could definitely get into Liam's train of thought here, no problem, and just no lose and just try and totally wind them up, no matter what.
See, this is a fixture, Kevin. You've seen it. It can make or break players as well, can't it? I mean, I always remember a moment when Mikey Johnston bottled it. People hate that word. He bottled it. He had a chance. He bottled it. Lewis Morgan. Playing against Rangers can make or break a player. Peter Grant made his debut against Rangers. I think he was 18 years of age at Ibrox under Davy Hay. And he came through it. Other players, they just buckle underneath the expectation and the magnitude of the occasion, regardless of whether or not Celtic will win the league. And I think they will have done by the time that fixture comes round, Kev. What's your take on it? Because, again, going to the games where we couldn't buy a meaningful result against Rangers for many, many seasons, I want to beat them every time. Every time. It's no bitterness, by the way. It's just football. I just want to beat them every time we play them, Kev.
You want Celtic to win every game that they actually play, and that's the bottom line. And you didn't allow yourself to get brung into the narrative, which is always out there after these games. These games, the amount of waffle that's spoken these games leading up to it by the mainstream media and that as well. And as the biggest game in the Scottish football calendar. I mean, you could also say that the fact is, if we were only a point ahead of Rangers going into that game a couple of weeks ago at Celtic Park, I'll bet you my left leg trusting Callum McGregor play. I'll bet you that they actually do play. I mean, you've got to have a look at the 2 of them played the week before against Hibs at Celtic Park. So what was the bigger game in Brendan's mind? That he was willing to actually not risk them at a game where you're 16 points clear. So if we go to Ibrox with the same sort of decisions to make with injuries in the squad, then Brendan will make a decision based on the magnitude of the game, and he will have a look at it and go, we've got a cup final, or that's how he will look at it. But if everybody's available, he will play his full Sames team at Ibrox. And I think as well, he's got something to prove. He's in a wee bit of a dip in these games, so he'll want his top team out, the strongest team available he will put out. But again, if there's any players 50-50, and if we're in a cup final, he will not risk them. He will not risk them because of the scenario in the game.
Sensible. That would be sensible for me. Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, very good goals on Saturday. Yeah, they were sharp passing and movement. Daizen is incredible. Kalmak looked fresh, couldn't better than he has been. Solid debut by Sinisalo, and Bernardo was faultless when he came on. I've got to say I agree with all of that. Often I'll read a message and I disagree with some of it. I agree with all of this, but I want to start off with Sinisalo because obviously it was all eyes on the keeper, Liam, and obviously you're part of the goalkeepers union yourself. Big Casper's going to be a massive miss no matter what. And we hadn't seen a great deal of Sinisalo, certainly in a Celtic jersey. A couple of friendlies, one competitive game. It was a cup match against Wraith Rovers. I thought first 10, 15 minutes when Hearts seemed to be trying to pin us back a bit. He pulled off 2 saves, one in particular, which was excellent, point-blank reaction save. And you know what? A couple of passes here and there, but I'm going to put it down to the wind and the rain. I thought he played really, really well. I was impressed at the weekend with Sinisalo.
His distribution in the build-up to the first goal was excellent as well.
Yeah.
I think you can clearly see that Casper has been kind of mentoring him, because I definitely saw elements of like a young Schmeichel in him. The way that he was kind of marshalling the defence, and he was doing a lot of shouting and pointing and saying like, "Give me the ball," and then he showed confidence far beyond what you would normally get from a 23-year-old making his league debut. So I was very impressed with him. I mean, I'd said in the week leading up to it on the blog that I didn't have any worries about putting him in because I knew he was a good keeper. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that he hasn't left me humiliated.
There's always that big question. I mean, he's a £1 million acquisition for Aston Villa, Quinny. You know what I mean? No, an earth-shattering move, but a very, very shrewd one, I felt at the time. Although he came in first, the way that it worked out is that we had a young pretender kind of learning from Schmeichel, like Liam says. He's taken his time, he's been patient, came in. And yeah, I was really impressed with the kind of leadership he, organising that defence. And he was part of the build-up to one of the goals. As was Nawrocki, by the way, a couple of times he was involved in the kind of defensive play, looking for that point of attack. I'm just nicking Brendan's phrases now, Quinny. I mean, why not? Were you impressed with Sinisalo? I think the big thing for me was you just need a safe pair of gloves between now and the end of the season. There's going to be some massive games. I think we're going to win the league, but I think Brendan Rodgers is looking at this and saying it's a tiny period of the season where you can look at 9 games potentially and say, right, let's win all 9. And I think, bringing in someone like Benzo, and no disrespect, I know that he's the butt of loads of jokes on this show and all the rest of it, and one of these days he will meet me and probably give me a slap. He's for Dalkeith as well, Kev, by the way, I'm pretty sure, Benzo. But, he came in against Sligo Rovers and he was really poor. So there's question marks. And I know it's not a competitive game, but there's an opportunity for you to play for Celtic, and he was really poor. Sinisalo's come in and it was a solid performance for me, Quinny.
Yeah, I would agree. I mentioned before I was at the game, and everything Liam said was spot on. He was very vocal throughout the game, very animated, constantly kind of talking to the rest of the defence and getting familiar. He was very comfortable in that sense as well. I've seen goalkeepers kind of rotate in for us, and even like the number ones, like even guys like Fraser Foster, unless something had just happened and he had to save something, he wasn't really a guy that would overly command the defensive area of the pitch in that same way. Not saying Sinisalo was amazing at it, but it was something for a young goalkeeper to come straight in on debut at home, really high pressure game. He looked really natural at it, looked really comfortable. I did think a little bit of his clearances were a little bit it felt like he was, whenever people were coming to press him, he wanted them to get as close to him as possible before he would empty it. If he didn't see a pass on, he knew it was going to go long. And I think it was maybe once or twice there's a wee bit of heart goes in the mouth with it, because that's don't invite the banana skin if you can avoid it, sort of thing. But I thought he did well. Really pleased he got a clean sheet on the game as well, because looking at the way they'd kind of set up, the way the first kind of 10 or 15 minutes went, especially, that wasn't a given, and it was a well-earned clean sheet in that sense from him.
Yeah, Kev, we've kind of touched on Sinisalo and Nawrocki. What was your take on it? Because, again, Nawrocki has been written off in some quarters, even over the last couple of games. Rodgers has said he has absolutely no concerns about playing him. I watched both games back, and I felt defensively he was sound. He was sound, and there was a couple of the goals from the three at the weekend there where he is involved in the genesis of the move, if you like, where it's, we're trying to find that pass into the midfield, and he did that pretty well. I know he's not. I don't think he's a natural passer of the ball, but I don't think he's a bad passer of the ball. And again, having played just a couple of games in recent times, I think his confidence will build as well. What do we do, though? Going back to the question I asked Liam earlier, what do we do when Trusty's 100%? I know he was back on the bench. Is it one of the Liam Scales scenarios, Kev, where you've come in, you've done a job, and until you mess this up, the jersey's yours?
First thing, I'll start with Sinisalo. I thought he was more mobile in his throwing with the ball. When he actually grabbed the ball from crossing that, he was quicker to get to the edge of the box, looking for that throw out. It was really quite interesting to see him in the second half giving the ball boys a pep talk behind the goals, saying that he wanted the ball quicker. When he came across to the end where I sit, before the start of the second half, he got the two ball boys that were sitting behind the goals and gave him a pep talk. You could actually tell what he was telling them, what he actually wanted from them, which I found quite interesting as well. But with regards to Nawrocki, the goal, the first goal, you could actually see in the stadium, you could actually see Schlupp shouting at Nawrocki to play the ball to McGregor before Schlupp did. Nawrocki, Schlupp was going to him, there's the ball on there, and he couldn't do it because he was wrong-footed, and his body shape was all on the ball. He ended up going to Schlupp passed it to McGregor. McGregor then plays the ball, which was on. I think I've seen enough of Nawrocki to actually know he's a decent player, but I can also see why Rodgers doesn't fancy him quite a bit. I can see that he will have a decent career, but it's not going to be with us, because I can see enough there why he's our fourth, maybe fifth choice centre half, and it's a lack of mobility, and again, it's very, very difficult because he is on his wrong side. He is really, really on his wrong side, but he looks extremely cumbersome trying to move the ball. And I do think there's an absolute lack of pace there. So he will have a career somewhere else, but I don't believe it will be with us.
It's frustrating, really. It must be frustrating for the gaffer as well, Quinny, when you think about, what we have available to us as a football club in terms of data when it comes to recruitment. It's like, I do think he's a decent defender. I think, if he's defending all game, he's going to win tackles, he's going to header, he's very good at sweeping up when other defenders make mistakes. But Kev makes a point there. It's maybe taking two passes for the one. If that's in isolation, that example there, he's having to go through Schlupp to get it to McGregor, whereas we play faster than that, don't we? So it would be very frustrating for the player and for Brendan if we've got a decent defender, but he just does not fit the way we play. That's what it sounds like, Quinny. I don't know what your take is on it.
I'm kind of the same, but a little bit different, if I can say that. But I had to look back, because I was listening to like everything after the Derby match where he played, and I'm very much of the opinion, kind of similar to Kev, like pretty decent defender, and similar to yourself, didn't really let a man away from him, won the majority of his duels, was good in the air and whatever. But if you look back to when he first came in, I had to go back and look at notes and skip through some videos I'd made and stuff like that. But the number one quality that he had when he first came was passing. Like, it was actually distinctly better than everyone else at passing when he first came in. And there was times where he was playing on the right with Scales on the left. There was times where he was playing on the left with Vickers on the right. I had to be quick flick through just appearances and stuff like that there. He would come off the bench for Welsh in a derby and stuff like that. Welsh went off injured and bits and pieces like that. So I think if he was on the right side, like Kev's alluding to there, he's kind of a little bit fish out of water on the left there. We might have seen a little bit more of that. He was put on the ball he was given the ball more than Vickers to get us out of the defence. But I really just think it's either shop window material, where it is just getting him a highlight package for the summer to kind of get him moved on, or it's like Brendan says, he's got no doubts, no questions, and needing him using him if needing him kind of thing. And if that is the way, we've seen it with lots of managers and lots of different clubs around the world, but it is a squad game, and if there is someone in there that's really keeping the level high in training, is kind of around the required level but not actually good enough or not actually getting those minutes, when it's almost job done, you want to get those guys a medal. So he might just be out there to earn a medal for a few days as well, for a few games, whatever the minimum is. I don't know what it is these days, if it's 3 or 4 or whatever. But yeah, like I guess I can say, I don't think he's got a Celtic future unless he's happy with the way this season's went and he's like, I'll just keep on going with that, because I think like being 4th or 5th centre back, like I think we'd be quite happy to have a guy at that level to do that job, you know. But the wages he's on probably doesn't work out for us in that sense, and he probably actually wants to play as well. I did think there was maybe a little bit of the Bernabes and the Lagerbielke case coming into this, where you've got a guy totally written off, you loan them out, they do well, and it's maybe they've just looked at him and went, maybe we'll play him. Why don't we just try and see if give it one more shot kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, you were saying that about Bernabe, weren't you? Bring him back, give him a shot.
Aye.
At that time. And you're right, Lagerbielke's gone out there and proved that, you know what, he's maybe not as bad as some of us thought. I'm now looking at Nawrocki, Quinny, and I'm thinking, right, Carter Vickers and Trusty is your first picks, right? But then underneath Carter Vickers is probably, in fact, no, probably, it's Nawrocki now. And then underneath Trusty, it's Scales. But unfortunately, because of the way that the injuries have happened, Nawrocki is playing on the wrong side, so it's a bit of a mismatch. So yeah, it's interesting that you said that, because I do remember some of the earlier games where he was finding the wingers with his distribution, and he was missing out the midfield, and it was a much sharper kind of movement. So that for me is where I am with Mike Nawrocki. Brendan Rodgers might actually think I could have a Scales and Nawrocki kind of backup plan here. What do you think, Liam? Because it's not as though he's getting to that stage of his career, 27, 28. You know, he's not at that point. He's only 24. So do you think Rodgers is going to keep him in the building? Liam, I wasn't sure if it was his resting face or if he had frozen. Unfortunately, he's frozen, but he might be coming back in. So let's try. Liam, I was trying to talk to a cardboard cutout version of Liam there for a minute. Sorry, mate. Mike Nawrocki, basically the question is stick or twist. Is it a case of putting him in the shop window, or can he be a very useful backup a la Liam Scales, albeit on the right-hand side?
Well, he's got his abilities, but unfortunately he moves the ball forward about as quickly as I moved in that image a moment ago. So, look, see if you're a team that wants just a guy who's just going to rose edit, just a no-nonsense, because his tackling is excellent, right? His distribution isn't that great, but his tackling is excellent. He's physically strong, good in the air. If you are one of those teams that still plays that kind of old school approach, he's the sort of guy you want to go in there and do very well. But Brendan Rodgers wants guys who are going to play it out from the back, and that's the problem. I don't think Nawrocki is that type of defender.
Well, you know, interestingly enough, Quinny was talking about some of his earlier performances with the passing looking better. It's going to be for me, I'm on the fence. I don't know if he's going to be here next season or not. Liam Scales proved everybody wrong. He was a backup left-sided central defender, and Brendan might think that some of his priorities lie elsewhere in terms of where we're bringing in bodies. I always think back to this, and I love Alan Morrison's data with this, with regards to the central defensive partnership. I thought would have been phenomenal had they not had knees that were made of China, was Simunovic and Benkovic. I just thought, wow, that was an incredible, potentially, central defensive partnership. And I think I looked fairly recently, since both players left Celtic, combined, they've played something like 16 games of senior football. So sad. It really is. I thought the pair of them had it in them. Simunovic did give us that iconic moment that has made it onto memes, T-shirts, mugs, key rings, and probably caps as well, where Kenny Miller's probably still no landed. I mean, I think he did something to Kenny that day because he's been speaking gibberish ever since. Norben Culture, good day to fellow Acsom addicts. The sun is out, but the garden and dogs can wait. By the way, that's phenomenal. And Norben Culture gave us, donated a framed jersey, a Neil Lennon jersey, which we were able to make some money from at the last event. 500 quid was donated to Jamie Tierney. So big shout out to you for that as well, mate. That does not go unnoticed. Sorry, Kev.
I think with the centre halves, when you talk about Scales and Trusty and Nawrocki, it seems to be Cameron Carter Vickers seems to be a bit untouchable. He's the one that it doesn't matter if he's only got one leg. If he says that he's playing, he's playing. Another 3. Then you've got Trusty, then you've got Scales, then you've got Nawrocki. And you've seen it this season that Rodgers has even went with the 2 left footers at times when CCV hasn't been there. Maybe that tells you more about how he really feels about Nawrocki than them actually playing just now because the other 2 are not available. But when you have a look at it, Nawrocki could be here next season, but he's still going to have that lack of pace next season. Austin Trusty is still going to be here next season. He's going to have the pace, but he's still going to be as weak as my bladder. Liam Scales is still going to be here next season. He's great. He's good at actually passing the ball, but he's still going to be weak in certain situations. So all of them are still going to have those faults, and it's how we actually merge those faults together in the partnership that we've actually got. But I think for me, the bottom line is Nawrocki's the slowest one out of all of them. Yeah. And I think that's why the writing's probably on the wall for him. And that's just me, but that's a modern game for you.
It raises a really good question, though, Kev. I mean, in terms of development of players, we spoke about it yesterday or the day before, around the fact that you look at a player's age, you think, they can't develop. Pace, that's a tricky one. You can't inject pace into a player. But some of the other things that you said there, decision making can get better, passing can get better. You can bulk somebody up, make them stronger, a la Ryan Christie. He came back from a loan, and I think he was about 1.5 stone heavier, and it was all muscle. And you can see now how that's benefited him not only at Celtic on an international level and going down south in a much more physical league, and he's been able to step up.
Unless you're Steve Clark and play him on the left wing.
Well, I know. Listen, some strange things happen when it gets to that particular
and Kenny
level.
McLean still gets a game as a defensive midfielder, and Ryan Christie's been one of the best defensive midfielders in the English Premiership this season.
I know. It's like managers sometimes, Kev, they've got their favourites, they've got their go-tos, haven't they? And I think most managers are guilty of it. But in terms of development, I wouldn't write off the development of a player like Nawrocki. Quinny, what's your thoughts on that? I know he can't get faster. That's something you just can't buy. But there's other areas of players' games. Look at how Matt O'Reilly developed. I know he was younger. Reo Hatate, he's 27 years of age. We'll get on to him in a few moments. I don't look at him as a 27-year-old, and I'm going to explain myself, guys, right? I know he's 27, but what I mean is, in terms of his development as a footballer, Liam, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he started playing senior football either 21 or 22, right? There or thereabouts.
Yeah, 22.
Yeah. So you 22-year-old, right? So you think to yourself, right, he's 5 years into his career. So if you're an 18-year-old, which is generally an age that you would break into a football team, you look at that in terms of his footballing life, he's 5 years into that run. So yeah, he's 27. He is 27, you can't change that. But he's only had about 5 years or 5 seasons of football in his legs. So there's development there, even though he's 27. He's not the finished article. Bruni was not the finished article when Brendan Rodgers got his hands on him. Quinny, can a player like Nawrocki be developed? Can he be retained in that respect?
Perhaps, but I don't think it's going to be sitting on the bench getting 5 games a year for us, for the most part, like we've seen it. Like if the longer term view is to maybe try and polish him up or whatever, you kind of have to see what we've done with the Lagerbielkes and the Bernabes. You probably need them out somewhere to play 30 games a year to cut his teeth at a higher level, because we've brought him from the Polish division, which is quite firmly below even the SPFL in terms of strength and quality and all the rest of it. So and obviously we play in Europe and all the rest of it as well. So it's maybe just been a step too far for him too quick, and then he's not really had the minutes to acclimatise and to adjust. Like we've seen with Trusty is a pretty good example. I know he'd obviously been signed to the Premier League team and played some Championship football and whatever, but his last couple of games are way better than his first couple of games, and Nawrocki is probably still in that stage of he's still in his first couple of games. He's not really got that many appearances across the time he's been here. So I think ultimately the thing, I'm always in Liam Scales' corner when it comes to these conversations, because the number one thing I always think about it is it's not cheap to get somebody better than him, clearly better. We spent 6 million on Trusty. He's not clearly better. Nawrocki was 4 million. He's probably not even better, never mind not clearly better. So I think that's probably the way the club need to operate now with this next centre back that we bring in, is you move your Lagerbielke on if you can, make some good money on him hopefully, and then maybe try and put Nawrocki down that path also, and then just try and throw a few of those bad purchases together if you can remonetize them, and then get someone in, spend like Engels, Eden level money on a centre back that makes a markable difference on the strength of the team.
Yeah, I mean, even like when we talk about Matt O'Neill's team, which has been the topic of discussion over the last week on here, you talk to any of his teammates and they didn't rate Bobo Baldi as a footballer. They loved him as a defender. But in terms of passing the ball and all that kind of stuff, that wasn't his game, you know. And Martin O'Neill kind of alluded to that as well. He was able to pick him up on a free because I think Toulouse, there was some kind of financial shenanigans and they had to rip up the registration of Bobo Baldi. We bring him in. And I thought he was a tremendous part of that Martin O'Neill team, but not a great passer of the ball. You know, in terms of one-on-ones, winning headers, winning tackles, the guy had a telescopic foot that came out of nowhere and just won the ball. He was unbelievable, but couldn't pass the ball, couldn't pass the thing. But again, I think it has changed. It has changed. You need that pace if you're going to be playing in a Brendan Rodgers side.
But Bobo Baldi cost us at the highest level.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. He absolutely did.
That's Mr. O'Neill admitted that himself, and
that's right. Yeah.
I was lucky enough to watch Napoli against AC Milan last night, and compared to the game that I watched on Saturday, it's like a different sport. The pace and the technical ability of the two teams last night, and I had to laugh at Don Hutchison. Don Hutchison was on co-commentators and co-coms, and he says the two AC Milan centre halves, was it Gabada and Pavlovic? He says they're extremely slow. And I'm like, you think they're really, really slow? Maybe they're slow at the top levels, but I've seen guys play for Celtic. It looked like they're actually touring a caravan compared to these two centre halves. But when you go to that level, these two guys are seen as slow, and you're like, that is quite scary. That is actually quite a scary thing when you actually see a game played at that pace. And
throwing a grand piano.
Aye, and this is where we are with the centre halves. This is where we are with the midfielders as well. We need my favourite word. We need physicality and pace in there, and we need physicality, pace at the back. And Nawrocki, Scales, and even Trusty probably haven't got that. And that's where we are.
The biggest disappointment of that trio, if they haven't, Kev, for me would be Trusty, because he's a more recent signing. You kind of thought,
but as you say, he can bulk up.
He can. He absolutely can. So can Nawrocki's quite slight as well for the height of him, you know, in terms of, you know, upper body. But I'm coming to you now, Liam, because I want to talk a wee bit about Reo. I still think, looking at the socials, looking at our comments on here, he seems to divide opinion quite a bit, particularly in post-match. I've always been a massive fan of Reo. Using Nawrocki as a kind of comparison here, right? So when we signed Nawrocki, he was 21, I think. Was he 21, 22? Wow. He had played 75 games of senior football, right? When we signed Reo, he had played 75 games of senior football. So although in terms of age, obviously Reo's older, but football development, they're at the kind of same stage. Reo's played a lot more games since he came here. I think there's development there. I think Brendan Rodgers believes there's development there. He still doesn't strike me as being a finished article, Liam, Reo Hatate. No. What's your take on him?
The other thing is with Reo is you've got to remember that at the age that we signed him, he had already, despite only playing a couple of years of football, he had forced his way into a team that won the league in Japan. And he was arguably their best player at that point as well. So, you know, not just to come from nowhere, but to come from nowhere and get into the best team in the league is a hell of an achievement. Even in a league like the J League, which is not regarded as a top level league, although I've got my own issues with that. I still think there is room to develop there. Absolutely. I think that you'll see that sort of 2-year delay, if you like. I think Hatate will hit his peak around 29, whereas most players it's usually 26 or 27. We see Daizen is at his absolute peak now at 27, right? And I think Reo is still probably 18 months off of that. And I hope that it's at Celtic. Because the other thing is, I rate him. I'm saying with you, I rate Hatate. I think he's a great player. I think he's an asset to the team. But he does divide opinion, and he does play kind of a risk-reward game. And when it comes off, he looks great. When it doesn't, you think, what the hell's he doing? And there's a lot of teams, particularly in England, who are not going to buy a player like that because they want a player who they know exactly how he's going to fit into their system. There's very little room in British football now, Scotland and England, for the kind of maverick player. And I think Hatate is a bit of a maverick, which is why I think if he does leave Celtic, it would be to Spain or to Italy. You know, like Kev said, they still appreciate good football in Italy. For me, the Italian league is a better watch than the English league, personally. You can have a debate about the standards of the players, whatever. To me, Serie A and the Bundesliga and the Spanish league are all a cut above the English league, just in terms of the pure spectacle and the style of football that's played. And I think Hatate would do well in Spain or Italy, maybe not Germany, because again, they're very regimented in their style usually. And I think if he goes to England, he's one of those players who would just disappear, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And also, we don't want to sell him because at the moment, with him being a player who his ratings are up and down, if Reo Hatate left Celtic tomorrow, it'd probably go for about 10 or 11 million, right? If he has one good season with us where he hits his absolute peak, which we think he probably will in the next year or two, you can at least double that.
Yeah, you then go into your Matt O'Reilly kind of. This is a conversation that JP and I were having last week in relation to the fact that he's not had his peak season at Celtic yet, Quinny. And that's my view on it. I don't know what you think. Is he the finished article? Is there more to come from him?
I think there's more to come from him. I think the problem he's got with trying to get out of Celtic and like move his career into one of the big 5 leagues or whatever is like his stature more than anything. Like we've seen like Ryan Christie going to the Premier League and playing defensive midfielder. Christopher Ayer goes to the Premier League, plays right back. You know, like there's just physical parameters that a lot of teams just won't kind of alter or whatever. And I think like in centre midfield, he's going to find it really tough to get into any of the leagues you care to mention, just because of just really stature and profile, and more than anything, it's not really down to ability or anything like that. You would need someone to be really convinced and really committed to he can play centre mid for this team and this structure and this manager or whatever. And I think whether it transpires or not, we'll see in the fullness of time. But I think like if he is to move into like a Spain or an Italy or something like that, he's probably going to end up playing fullback or wide or something like that. You know, like Frimpong's a great example. When Frimpong signed for Leverkusen, I thought he was going to drown big time because he was very like a little flimsy right back.
Yeah,
but he did great at right back. He's beefed up as well. If you see him, he's actually quite stocky. And in actual fact, his career, I know if you look at apps and all the rest of it, will show you him playing right wing back and whatever. But if you actually watch Leverkusen, he's at the back post, he's up front. You know, he's a kind of like, not quite the same what we did with Taylor, but similar kind of principle of the sense of like you're letting him off the leash to find space and to overload and whatever. And I think something like that would happen with Hatate if he was to move on, is like he would be repurposed or kind of brought into a system specifically, because he does do both sides of the game great. He's great tracking back, good at winning the ball, very composed, good range of passing. I think we would all agree maybe the final third is, although he's scored some great goals and he's made some amazing passes, it's not like clearly like the absolute best thing about his game. You know, he's quite well-rounded in that respect. So I think he can only get better, like Liam says, and everything else. Like if we did a great champ, this is the thing that I always think it will keep him here in a transfer window, is like he's not really had a great European campaign under his belt, you know, where teams would look at that and go, wow, against this team and that team, he ran the show, he did this, he did that. He's had bursts, he's had moments, he's had like little kind of spells, but he's not really had that kind of coming of age campaign, really, you know. So I'm not really too much worried that he would leave unless it's that kind of Kyogo thing where you enlist the agent and task him to find me somewhere to go kind of thing. And equally, I don't see clubs super queuing up for him at centre mid, just with the way, like Liam said, ratings are up and down at times and that kind of thing as well. So I think he has got better quite clearly. I think he only gets better almost season on season. And similar to what you're talking about in terms of like his kind of athletic age, you know, like how long he's playing the game or whatever, like he's still not at the top of the mountain yet. He's still got a bit to go in terms of peak.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant summary there, Quinny. One final thing I want to talk about, guys, because again, there's loads of points we haven't covered yet. It's so quick, this 1 hour. 1,500 watching on a Monday afternoon. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Is the left back scenario, because comments made over the weekend by Brendan would suggest obviously Taylor's gone. We kind of guessed that. Tierney's coming in. The big question now that remains, Kev, is do we keep Schlupp? So I'm just going to go around the room here. Do we keep Jeffrey Schlupp? What's your take, Kevin Graham?
Not as a left back.
Caveat.
Yes, I like it. to use a favoured Acsom term, caveat. Where do you think he's suited? Where do you think he's suited?
If you would have asked me 3 or 4 weeks ago, I would have said yes, definitely. But now I've maybe seen enough to say that he looks like a centre midfielder playing at left back. And I would take him, but as a backup in the midfield, but not at left back.
Yep. Okay.
He can do a job there at a certain level. He was superb in Munich. The whole team was superb in Munich. But I've seen a couple of things where I'm going, nah, you can tell that you're a wee bit of a fish out of water out there, but you can do a job. But if I want a backup to Tierney, who is going to play quite a few games a season, I'd maybe want somebody more naturally suited to the left back position. Like Reo Hatate, I'm kind of agreeing with Quinny on that shout.
Well, he's played there.
Hatate could be a top class left back.
He's played
could
there
well
before.
be.
Yeah. Liam, Kev says sign him, but not as left back. What's your take on Jeffrey Schlupp?
I'd be happy if we signed him. I think, like Kev says, at a certain level, he can fill in at left back, and I think the assumption is that Tierney is going to play all the European games and all the important league games. So, if it's a cup tie or whatever, or if it's a home league game where we think we should win quite comfortably, I think pretty much the same as Tony Ralston on the other side. You want Alistair Johnson to play, but if he's no there at Scottish level, Ralston is perfectly fine, and I think Schlupp's the same. But one that interested me, which I was just reading about today, and I might do a wee blog on later on if I've got time. There's a guy at Spurs, I think it's Sergio Reguilon, ex-Real Madrid, going to be available on a free transfer, left back. Got a classic scenario for Celtic, right? A good player who has fallen down the pecking order, and we have a pretty good form for taking Spurs rejects and turning them into cracking players. Think about Joe Hart, think about CCV. I think this could be another project where bring him in on the understanding that he is the understudy to Tierney, and see if he can prove himself.
Well, I look forward to reading that on the blog. The link is under this video. Quinny, you are going to have the final say. Schlupp, should he stay or should he go?
Yeah, I'm not a keep Schlupp. I think he's done all right for the 6 months, and I think really the failing signing someone like Penrice or whatever, I think the best thing the club could do would be go and get another Alex Valley, approach one of the top teams in European football and say, who's your best left back prospect? We're going to give them 15 games this year in all competitions, and we're going to manage our primary left back with them and get a wee loan fee, get someone who's hungry, who's chapping at the bit, will grasp the opportunity every minute they get, similar to what we've seen with Valley as well. I don't think there was any real complaints from effort and endeavour and whatever from him. Because we don't have a natural left back in the squad. We're not going to be playing Montgomery or bring someone else through, maybe like Frame. Well, maybe somebody like Frame comes into it, I don't know, but I don't think that's likely to just be the straight replacement for Tierney. And I don't see us buying someone that's like Scales trusty level to back up to kind of back up Tierney. Mm-hmm. So I think, you probably just try and do the Valley move again or sign Penrice.
Yeah, good shout, actually. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. It's been an intriguing discussion with the three Celtic heads, Kevin Graham, Liam Carrigan and Quinny, of course. And it's an absolute pleasure to be on the 12:30 in front of 1,500 of you. Thanks, every single one of you. If you want to come and see us live, Lubo is the next guest. He's coming on the 3rd of May. And I must say there's fewer than 50 tickets already for that one. Link is under the video. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And thank you to Kev, Liam and Quinny for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, lads.